split in specialization. At TAC, everybody was more of a generalist.
The atmosphere or the environment that Gropius was a major part of creating was, well, I guess what we call collaboration. The fact that the people liked each other was very, very important. But ultimately, I think the process is dependent on the quality of work.
We got the Graduate Center at Harvard in 1949, shortly after we started, through the wish of the university to give a good commission to Gropius before he retired. We were catapulted from doing small houses suddenly to doing a rather large institution. After that, in 1956, the University of Baghdad wanted a well-known architect, and they were persuaded to hire Gropius and TAC. And that was a very large project, and we rapidly grew from, let's say, 15 or 20 people up to 50 people.
The architect of that period, post-war period, who reveled in large-scale projects and was a giant, who made an aesthetic of the skyscraper construction, apartment buildings and office buildings, is Mies van der Rohe.
It can be said that what he really influenced and affected most in Chicago, and I would submit in the United States, was taste. Mies changed the American taste and became, in a way, the American architectural paradigm post-WW2 version. He was able to accomplish this because of corporate America's interest in producing something that was in good taste, was stylish, was of elegance, and worked well with Madison Avenue's interest in producing a sense of commodity in America.
When I came to the States, my only choice was IIT. I knew the 60s scene in Chicago, and by seeing those buildings firsthand, that I could get a complete look and understanding of what we all considered at that time was the high point of modern architecture.
So, the question is, what happened afterwards? In the 60s and 70s, he began to be trivialized by people who used his work. Mies, who was known to look at details for hours on end and then move something a quarter of an inch. Nobody else bothered about that because what they saw was a simplistic way to do good, make money, and succeed in a society.
When the first revolutionary moves appeared in modern architecture, Le Corbusier or anywhere else, they were largely freestanding buildings. They didn't think of continuity and urban form.
When they brought this free form to the United States, they immediately found a receptive climate. Because instead of having to build buildings that in a complicated way had to fit into pre-existing cities, this great rush, this great boom of building occurred, and suddenly, here were the architects telling the developers it was okay to level the city. In fact, it was virtuous to knock buildings down, bring parks in, and build tall buildings. And there was a virtue attached to the exposition of the parts of a building, and they used the term honesty. They had swapped a social goal for a moral attitude. A moral attitude that did not deal with people, but dealt with the ways buildings were made.
He gave us 860 Lakeshore Drive, or he gave us those buildings down at 5600 South Lakeshore Drive, which were simply modular developments of space, boxes, a large box made up of little boxes, and the little boxes were made up of posts and beams. It was a box of infinite height, of infinite width or length, and you could simply cut them off wherever the proportions indicated that you should. But he was designing for a modular society, which he felt existed here. A society without values, human values.
He produced this architecture which could ultimately be commercialized, and it became somewhat the model, you know, for corporate and governmental building types. It was very easily duplicable, and there was a proliferation of those buildings, which then ultimately caused their demise.
As happens with any such intellects, the interpretation of Mies became more like the Quran to Islam. And so rather than allowing this language to flourish, most of the students and recipients froze it in place, and in fact created a kind of dead language that you see impacted not only Chicago, but the country at large.
Well, I think after the war, everything got bigger, everything got divorced from architecture. That cut right through a number of beliefs that all of us had, that your beliefs were a continuum from politics to design. Now, all of this must have been transparent to Gropius long before the rest of us felt it. I think he must have felt that the climate had changed.
As the whole collaborative became larger, it became more and more difficult to find a similarity of qualitative views. We were drifting, and we had accepted one major job in Baghdad, and then we were into looking at American Air Force bases, and I wasn't too happy. And so I said, why is this firm that had come together because of a whole moral idea about, if you will, building of a better world after the Second World War? Why were they doing that?
Gropius was a leader in the design of the Pan Am building. We were associated with Pietro Bluschi on that project, but Grote was very much a leader. His idea for the building was to help make it more graceful in its form. He was concerned that the building was a very large building, was going to cut out light and eventually the view down Park Avenue. What could be argued, I think, that Park Avenue might have been better without any tower there. But I think once he had accepted the commission, he felt there was no turning back.
Information is power. The News is the most broadly read English-language newspaper in Mexico. The indispensable...
Many opportunities to say us.